The ping came back wrong. That's all I can tell you. After 6 years operating sonar on a Los Angeles-class submarine, you learn what the ocean sounds like. You learn the difference between a whale and a Russian sub, between a thermal layer and a shipwreck, between something moving and something waiting. But that night, 200 miles off the coast of Guam, the ping came back wrong. It was 03:14 hours, the middle watch. The worst shift, when your mind plays tricks and coffee stops working. I was alone in the sonar room, headphones tight against my ears, watching the waterfall display paint green lines across the black screen. I left the Navy in 2019, honorable discharge. They said it was routine, that my service record was exemplary, that I'd be welcome back if I ever wanted to re-enlist. But I saw the notes in my file, the ones they thought I wouldn't notice. Psychological evaluation recommended. Extended isolation may have caused auditory hallucinations. Subject displays signs of hypervigilance related to acoustic phenomena. They thought I was broken, that months underwater had cracked something in my mind. Maybe they were right. But hallucinations don't show up on 3 different sonar systems, don't get recorded in acoustic logs, don't make other operators request transfers without explanation. I tried civilian life. Got a job at an oceanographic research institute in Seattle. They needed someone who understood underwater acoustics, someone who could analyze recordings from deep-sea monitoring stations. I thought it would be different, safer. Just science? Just data? I was wrong. The Institute maintained a network of hydrophones scattered across the Pacific. Listening stations anchored to the ocean floor, recording constantly, mapping whale migrations, monitoring seismic activity, tracking the acoustic health of the ocean. My job was to review the recordings, flag anything unusual, compile reports for the research teams. It took me 3 weeks to find the first one. A hydrophone stationed near the Mariana Trench had captured something at 03:04 hours, local time. The timestamp made my stomach turn. I almost deleted it, almost convinced myself it was a coincidence. But I listened anyway. The breathing was there, deeper than before, slower, but unmistakable. And this time, there were others. Multiple sources, different frequencies, overlapping rhythms creating a symphony of inhalation and exhalation, like a choir gathered in the deepest part of the ocean, singing in a language made of pressure and sound. I sat in that lab until sunrise, headphones clamped to my ears, listening to something that shouldn't exist. The patterns were complex, mathematical, repeating sequences that almost resembled communication protocols. Like listening to a conversation in a language where every word is a waveform, every sentence a carefully constructed frequency. I ran analysis after analysis, tried to find a natural explanation, volcanic vents, thermal currents, biological sources. Nothing fit. The sounds were too organized, too deliberate, too intelligent. I started going through the archive. Years of recordings, thousands of hours of ocean ambiance. They were everywhere. Every deep monitoring station had captured them at some point. Brief episodes, a few minutes here, an hour there, always in the deepest water, always during the darkest hours. And always the same timestamp. 03:14 hours, whatever time zone, whatever ocean. Like they were synchronized, coordinating across thousands of miles of water. I made a map, plotted every occurrence I could find. The pattern that emerged made my hands shake. The contacts formed a network, a global web of acoustic signatures connecting the deepest trenches. The Mariana, the Puerto Rico, the Java, the Philippine. They weren't random encounters. They were nodes, communication points, a planetary system we'd been deaf to until we finally developed the technology to hear it. And we'd been listening for decades without understanding what we were hearing. I should have published my findings, should have brought it to the senior researchers. This was exactly the kind of discovery that makes careers. That changes our understanding of the ocean. But I remembered what happened in the Navy, how the data disappeared, how the questions stopped. So I kept working in secret, collecting evidence, building a case so overwhelming that they couldn't ignore it. That's when the recordings started changing. At first it was subtle. The breathing patterns shifted, became faster, more agitated, like whatever was making them had noticed our hydrophones, had realized we were listening. Then came the mimicry. I was reviewing a recording from a station off the coast of Japan when I heard it. A sound I recognized instantly. My voice, distorted, underwater, but unmistakably mine, saying words I'd spoken into the Sonar comm 6 years ago. Words that should have been lost in the Pacific, absorbed by water and time. But something had remembered, had recorded me the same way I'd recorded it. And now it was playing my words back, broadcasting them into the deep ocean for the hydrophones to capture. I listened to myself say, unknown biological, in a voice that sounded like it was drowning. Heard my own breathing mixed with that deep rumbling. My heartbeat synchronized with something massive and ancient. I deleted the file immediately, wiped it from the servers, told myself it was a glitch. A corrupted recording, acoustic interference. But the next day, there was another one. Different words, different station, but still my voice, saying things I'd written in my logbook, private thoughts I'd never spoken aloud. They were reading my memories, extracting them through some process I couldn't comprehend, broadcasting my own fear back at me through kilometers of dark water. I stopped going to the lab, called in sick, spent 3 days in my apartment, curtains drawn, trying to convince myself I was losing my mind. It would have been easier that way. Simpler. A clean diagnosis, medication, therapy, recovery. But on the third night, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. The voice on the other end was scrambled, distorted, but I could make out the words.
Stop looking!
That's all they said. 3 syllables, then silence. I checked the call log. The number showed as unavailable, untraceable. But I knew who it was, or rather, what organization they represented. The same people who'd buried my Navy reports, who'd reassigned operators and classified data. They were still watching, still listening, and they wanted me to stop. I thought about quitting, walking away, pretending I'd never heard anything. But the recordings kept coming. Every hydrophone in the network was picking them up now. The breathing, the voices, my voice, other voices I didn't recognize. The ocean was speaking, and it was getting louder. 2 weeks ago, the Institute lost contact with a deep-sea monitoring station, 7,000 meters down in the Philippine Trench. Just stopped transmitting. They sent a remote submersible to investigate, equipped with cameras and recovery equipment. The footage came back yesterday. I wasn't supposed to see it, wasn't authorized for that level of access. But I still had friends in the lab. People who trusted me, who knew I'd understand what they were seeing. The hydrophone was gone. Not damaged, not buried. Gone. Ripped from its anchoring cables and carried away. But that's not what made them call me. In the final seconds of footage before the submersible's cameras failed, it captured something rising from deeper water. A shape, immense, moving with impossible grace through the pressure that would crush steel. And on its surface, growing like barnacles on a whale, pieces of human technology, sonar arrays, hydrophones, equipment that had gone missing over decades, all integrated into something organic, something alive. They were collecting our sensors, incorporating them, learning from them. building something we couldn't begin to understand. The footage was classified within hours. The submersible data was seized. Everyone who'd seen it was interviewed by people in suits who didn't identify their agency. I was told to forget about it, threatened with prosecution if I spoke about what I'd seen. But I'm telling you now, because you need to know. The ocean has been hiding something since before we had the technology to listen. Something vast, something intelligent, something that's been studying us far longer than we've been studying it. And now it's using our own tools against us, learning our language, speaking our words, showing us that the boundary between their world and ours is thinner than we ever imagined. I don't work at the Institute anymore. Don't operate sonar. Don't listen to the ocean. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear it. That low rumble, that breathing, not through headphones or hydrophones, just there, in the silence between heartbeats. And I know I'm not alone. None of us are. The ocean is listening, always listening, and whatever lives in the deep places is finally ready to be heard. Routine sweep, nothing unusual. Until I heard it breathe. Not a mechanical sound, not a whale song, or the groan of shifting plates. This was organic, deliberate, like lungs filling with water instead of air. And it was big. Few people understand what happens in the deep Pacific. The things we track, the things we're ordered not to report. Some say it's classified technology from foreign nations. Others have heard what I've heard. This is what really happened in the darkness 3,000 feet below the surface, where no light reaches, where sound is the only truth. My name is Petty Officer Second Class Michael Garrett. I've operated sonar systems for the United States Navy since 2017. I've tracked enemy vessels through the Strait of Hormuz. I've listened to the ocean floor crack open during underwater earthquakes. I've heard things that made senior officers go pale and delete the recordings. But nothing prepared me for that deployment. We were running silent, monitoring Chinese naval exercises near the Philippine Sea. Standard reconnaissance. Our Los Angeles-class boat could stay submerged for months, invisible, listening. That's what we did. We listened. The sonar room was my domain, a cramped space filled with screens, spectrum analyzers, and recording equipment. Sound travels differently underwater. Faster, clearer. A good operator can hear a wrench dropped on a deck 60 miles away. Can identify the specific class of submarine by the way its propeller cuts through water. I was good, maybe too good. That's why they kept me on shift longer than regulation allowed. That's why I was alone when it started. The waterfall display showed nothing unusual at first. Ambient ocean noise, the distant thrum of our own reactor, biological sounds, clicks and whistles from marine life. Normal. Routine. Then the baseline changed. It started as a low-frequency rumble. Below 20 hertz. Subsonic. The kind of sound you feel in your chest before you hear it. I adjusted the filters, thinking it was seismic activity. Underwater volcanoes are common in that region. But the sound was moving. Slowly, deliberately, rising from deep water toward our depth. I logged it. Marked the timestamp, adjusted my headphones, and leaned closer to the screen. The rumble continued, steady, rhythmic, like breathing. I ran a classification check. The computer analyzed the frequency, duration, and pattern. It came back with no match. Not whale, not submarine, not any known geological phenomenon. Unknown biological. My hand hovered over the comm switch. Protocol said to report unidentified contacts immediately. But something stopped me. Some instinct that told me if I reported this, if I brought the officer of the deck down here, it would disappear. Like it knew we were listening. So I waited. And it came closer. The breathing sound grew louder, deeper. I could hear layers now, multiple resonances overlapping, like a choir of lungs expanding and contracting in perfect synchronization. The waterfall display showed a massive acoustic signature rising through the thermocline, ascending from depths our charts said were empty. Nothing lives that deep, nothing that size. I zoomed in on the contact. The computer estimated range at 12 nautical miles, depth 2,200 feet, speed 3 knots, bearing steady. Heading directly toward us. Before you turn off the lights, hit subscribe and ring the bell. Here at Chills from Reality, every story leaves a mark, one you might not forget, because what I'm about to tell you was recorded, logged, then classified and buried so deep that admitting it exists could end my career. But you deserve to know what's down there. I initiated an active ping against protocol during silent running, but I needed confirmation, needed to see the shape of whatever was rising toward us. The ping traveled out through the black water, a focused pulse of sound, reaching, searching. It hit something. The return echo made my blood freeze. The contact was massive, larger than our submarine, larger than any whale species on record. The sonar painted a rough outline, elongated, organic, with multiple protrusions along its body. Not streamlined like a submarine, not symmetrical like a whale. Irregular, alien, and it had stopped moving. Complete silence. The breathing sound cut off. The rumble ceased. Even the ambient ocean noise seemed to pull back, like the water itself was holding its breath. I stared at the screen. The contact remained motionless at 12 miles, suspended in the darkness, watching us. The hair on my neck stood up. I've felt fear before. Depth charge drills, reactor scrams, near collisions in crowded shipping lanes. But this was different. This was the fear of being seen by something that shouldn't exist. Something that lived in a world we only visited, where we were the intruders. I reached for the comm switch. Then it pinged back. Not a mechanical ping, not sonar, but a sound so perfectly identical to our active pulse that for 3 seconds I thought we'd hit a reflection layer. An echo returning from the ocean floor. But the ocean floor was 2,000 feet below the contact, and the sound came from it. The thing had copied our ping perfectly, every frequency, every duration, like it was learning, mimicking, communicating. My hands shook. I grabbed the logbook, started writing everything down. Timestamp, bearing, frequency analysis. The words came out sloppy, desperate, because I knew what happens to sonar contacts that don't make sense. They get erased, reclassified, forgotten. The contact moved again. Not toward us, parallel, matching our course and speed with perfect precision, like it was shadowing us, studying us. The breathing sound returned. Slower now, heavier. I could hear undertones, clicks and pulses woven into the rhythm, patterns that almost sounded like language, like something trying to speak through the physics of sound itself. I should have reported it, should have hit the comm and brought half the boat running to confirm what I was hearing. But I didn't, because part of me understood. If I reported this, men with clearances above mine would seal the room, confiscate the recordings, and I would spend the rest of my career wondering if I'd really heard it, if it had been real. So I listened. For 47 minutes, that thing paced us through the dark Pacific. Never closer, never farther. Just there, breathing, clicking, pinging back every time I sent out active sonar like it was playing a game, testing us. Then at 0401 hours, it dove. The waterfall display showed the contact descending rapidly. 1,500 feet, 2,000, 3,000, deeper than our crushed depth, deeper than any submersible could follow. The breathing faded. The clicks dispersed into the ambient noise, and it was gone. I sat in that chair, headphones still pressed to my ears, listening to empty ocean. My shirt was soaked with sweat. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The logbook lay open in front of me. Pages of notes documenting an encounter that officially never happened. I heard footsteps outside. The officer of the deck making his rounds. I closed the logbook, deleted the active ping records from the computer, reset the displays to standard watch-keeping mode. When he opened the door, I was staring at a clean screen. Routine night. Nothing unusual. He asked if everything was quiet. I said, "Yes, sir." He nodded and left. I never reported it, never told anyone on the boat, but I kept the handwritten log, hid it in my personal effects. And when we surfaced 3 weeks later, I made copies, sent them to people I trusted, because I knew what came next. 2 months after we returned to port, I was reassigned. No explanation, just new orders to a training facility in Virginia, away from submarines, away from sonar. My replacement on the boat lasted 6 weeks before requesting a transfer. Psychological evaluation, they said. Stress-related. He never told anyone why, but I saw his eyes when we passed each other on base. He'd heard it too. Over the next year, I started asking questions, carefully, quietly, talking to other sonar operators in bars after work, in encrypted chats, anywhere the conversation couldn't be recorded. They all had stories. A French submarine in the Mediterranean that tracked something massive circling their position for 8 hours before vanishing into a trench. A British sonar tech who recorded whale songs that contained human voices. Clear, distinct, speaking words in languages that don't exist. A Russian defector who swore their northern fleet encountered something in the Barents Sea that disabled their entire sonar array. Not with jamming, with sound so precise it burned out the electronics. None of it official, none of it documented. But all of us heard the same thing in each other's voices. Terror. The Navy knows. Every Navy knows. They've been hearing these things for decades, tracking them, recording them, classifying the data so deep that even admirals don't have access. Because what do you tell the public? That the ocean, 70% of Earth's surface, is inhabited by intelligences we can't explain. That every time we dive, we're entering their territory? That they watch us, study us, mimic our technology? That sometimes they follow us home? Would you have reported it? Knowing what happens to people who see too much? Knowing your career, your credibility, everything you worked for could vanish with one classified stamp? I think about that contact every day, that massive shape suspended in the darkness. The breathing, the mimicry, the intelligence behind it. And I wonder if it thinks about me. Last month, I was visiting family in California, stayed in a beach house right on the coast. Beautiful place, big windows facing the Pacific. On the second night, I woke up at 03:14 hours. I don't know why, maybe old habits from the night watch, maybe something else. I walked to the window, looked out at the black water stretching to the horizon, and I heard it. Faint, distant, but unmistakable. That low-frequency rumble rising from deep water. Breathing. I stood there for 20 minutes, listening, watching the dark waves roll in, knowing something was out there, knowing it remembered me the same way I remembered it. When I finally went back to bed, I left the window open. Let the sound of the ocean fill the room. Because closing the window wouldn't change anything, wouldn't make it go away. It's always been there. In the trenches, in the darkness, in places our maps mark as empty. Waiting. The Navy will never admit what we've heard. They'll keep classifying the data, rotating operators, burying the encounters. Because the truth is too big, too terrifying, too impossible to control. But we know. Everyone who's operated sonar in deep water knows. The ocean isn't empty, it never was. And whatever lives down there has been listening to us far longer than we've been listening to it. I still have my logbook, hidden, encrypted, a record of something that officially doesn't exist. Sometimes I think about releasing it, posting the data online, forcing someone to acknowledge what we've heard. But then I remember the breathing, the mimicry, the intelligence. And I realize they don't want to be found. They want to remain hidden, unknown, free to exist in the depths without our interference. Maybe that's better. Maybe some things should stay in the darkness, some mysteries left unsolved. But I'll tell you this. If you ever find yourself alone on the ocean at night, if you ever listen to the water and hear something that sounds wrong, something that breathes when it should be silent, don't ignore it. Don't convince yourself it's nothing, because it's listening to you too. And it remembers. To this day, I check the Navy's unclassified sonar reports, logs from civilian research vessels, anything that might contain a fragment of what I heard. Most of it's been scrubbed, redacted, lost in bureaucratic black holes. But every few months, something slips through. A footnote in a marine biology paper about unidentified low-frequency sounds. An offshore drilling report mentioning equipment malfunctions caused by acoustic anomalies. A fishing boat crew that swears something massive surfaced beside their vessel before disappearing. They're still out there, still breathing, still watching, still waiting for us to understand that we're not alone in the deep places, that we never were. If this story made your heart race, hit that like button and subscribe. Because here at Chills from Reality, the fear doesn't end when the story does. And if you've ever heard something in the water you couldn't explain, tell me below. Because maybe you weren't imagining it. Maybe it heard you too.